Hello everyone. I promised you an extract from Dickens for the final post, but I couldn't find my copy of the Pickwick Papers, which I wanted to use. So I've decided to choose another author. I'm going to read you some short extracts from The Wind in the Willows. And this is from the chapter Dulce, Domum, which is really the Christmas chapter, when Mole, who has been up above ground with his new friends, Rat and Toad and the wonderful Badger, for a number of months, and had really forgotten about his own home underground. And one day with Rat, in the deep wood, he suddenly smelt something familiar. Felt something familiar. And after a lot of digging, he found his old house down a long tunnel, of course. And we find him, with Rat, having explored his old house. Ratty is very hungry and is keen to eat, and they've had difficulty in finding something to eat. And this is where we take up the story. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I'm going to read extracts from it. It really is a lovely Christmas story. At last, the Rat succeeded in decoying Mole to the table and had just got seriously to work with the sardine opener when sounds were heard from the forecourt without. Sounds like the scuffling of small feet in the gravel and a confused murmur of tiny voices, while broken sentences reached them. Now, all in a line. Hold the lantern up a bit, Tommy. Clear your throats first. No coughing after I say 1, 2, 3. Oh, where's young Bill? Here, come on. We're all awaiting. What's up? Inquired the Rat, pausing in his labours. Oh, I think it must be the field mice, replied the Mole, with a touch of pride in his manner. They go round carol singing regularly at this time of year. They're quite an institution in these parts, and they never pass me over. They come to Mole End last of all. I used to give them hot drinks and supper too sometimes, when I could afford it. It will be like old times to hear them again. Oh, let's have a look at them, cried the Rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight, and a seasonable one, that met their eyes when they flung the door open. In the forecourt, lit by the dim rays of a horn lantern, some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle, red worsted comforters around their throats, their forepaws thrust deep into their pockets, their feet jigging for warmth. With bright, beady eyes they glanced shyly at each other, sniggering, sniffing and applying coat sleeves a good deal. As the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern was just saying, "And now then, 1, 2, 3, and forthwith their shrill little voices uprose on the air, singing one of the old-time carols that their forefathers composed in fields that were fallow and held by frost, or when snowbound in chimney corners, and handed down to be sung in the marry street to lamp-lit windows at Yuletide. After they'd finished, and the voices ceased, the singers, bashful but smiling, exchanged sidelong glances, and silence succeeded, but for a moment only. Then from up above and far away, down the tunnel they had so lately travelled, was borne to their ears in a faint musical hum the sound of distant bells, ringing a joyful and clangorous peal. "Very well sung, boys," said the Rat heartily. "And now come along in and warm yourselves by the fire and have something hot." "Oh, yes, come along, field mice," cried the Mole eagerly. "This is quite like old times. Shut the door after you. Pull up that settle to the fire Now, you just wait a minute while we... Oh, Ratty, he cried in despair, plumping down on a seat with tears impending. Whatever are we doing? We've nothing to give them. Oh, you leave all that to me, said the masterful Rat. Here, you with the lantern, come over this. I want to talk to you. Now tell me, are there any shops open at this hour of the night? Why, certainly, sir, replied the field mice respectfully. At this time of the year, our shops keep open till all sorts of hours. Then look here, said the Rat. You go off at once, you and your lantern, and you get me... Here much muttered conversation ensued, and the Mole only heard bits of it, such as, fresh, mind. No, a pound of that will do. See you get Buggins, for I won't have any other. No, only the best. If you can't get it there, try somewhere else. Yes, of course, homemade, no tin stuff. Well, then do the best you can. Finally, there was a chink of coin passing from paw to paw. The field mouse was provided with an ample basket for his purchases, and off he hurried, he and his lantern. Well, then, the small field mice get warm by the fire and exchange some stories. Eventually, the big boy returns with the food, and they have a gorgeous meal. Then they leave. They clattered off at last, very grateful and showering wishes of the season, with their jacket pockets stuffed with remembrances for the small brothers and sisters at home. When the door had closed on the last of them and the chink of the lanterns had died away, Mole and Rat kicked the fire up, drew their chairs in, brewed themselves a last nightcap of mulled ale, and discussed the events of the long day. At last the Rat, with a tremendous yawn, said, "Oh, Mole, old chap, I'm ready to drop. Sleepy is simply not the word. Oh, that's your own bunk over that side? Well, I'll take this then. What a ripping little house this is. Everything's so handy." He clambered into his bunk and rolled himself well up in the blanket, and slumber gathered him forthwith, as a swath of barley is folded into the arms of the reaping machine. The weary Mole was also glad to turn in without delay, and soon had his head on his pillow in great joy and contentment. But ere he closed his eyes, he let them wander around his room, mellow, in the glow of the firelight that played or rested on familiar and friendly things which had long been unconsciously a part of him, and now smilingly received him back, without rancour. He was now in just the frame of mind that the tactful Rat had quietly worked to bring about in him. He saw clearly how plain and simple, how narrow even, it all was, but clearly, too, how much it all meant to him, and the special value of some such anchorage in one's existence. He did not at all want to abandon the new life and its splendid spaces, to turn his back on the sun and air and all they offered, and creep home and stay there. The upper world was all too strong. It called to him still, even down there, and he knew he must return to the larger stage. But it was good to think he had this to come back to, this place which was all his own, these things which were so glad to see him again, and could always be counted upon for the same simple welcome. Good night, and a very Merry Christmas.